Most firms pass through several stages of organizational development as the nature and size of their international activities grow. As they go through these evolutionary stages, their organizational structures change, typically due to the strain imposed by growth and geographical spread, the need for improved cooperation and control across business units, the constraint imposed by host government regulations on ownership and equality. Multinationals are not born overnight. The evolution from a domestic to a truly global organization may involve a long and somewhat tortuous process with many and diverse steps, as here you can see it on this page. Although research into internationalization has revealed a common process, it must be stressed that this process is not exactly the same for all firms. Some firms may use other operation modes such as licensing or subcontracting instead of as well as establishing their own foreign production or service facilities. Some firms go through the various steps rapidly, while others evolve slowly over many years, although recent studies have indicated a speeding up of the process. Export is typical the initial stage for manufacturing firms entering international operation. As such, it is rarely involves much organizational response until the level of export sales reaches a critical point. Of course, simple exporting may be difficult for service companies, such as legal firms, so they may be forced to make an early step into foreign direct investment operations. Exporting tend to be handled by an intermediary, for example, a foreign agent or distributor, as local market knowledge is deemed critical. As export sales increases, however, an export manager may be appointed to control foreign sales and actively seek new markets. This person is commonly for the domestic operations. At this stage, exporting is controlled from the domestic-based home office through a designated export manager. As the firm develops expertise in foreign markets, agents and distributors are often replaced by direct sales with the establishment of sales subsidiaries or branch offices in the foreign market countries. This stage may be prompted by problems with foreign agents, more confidence in the international sales activity, the desire to have greater control, and or the decision to give greater support to the exporting activities, usually due to its increasing importance to the overall success of the organization. For some firms, it is a short step from the establishment of a foreign subsidiary to a foreign production or service facility. This step may be considered small if the firm is already assembling the production abroad to take advantage of the cheap labor or to save on shipping costs and tariffs, for example. Alternatively, the firm may have a well-established export and marketing program that enables it to take advantage of host government incentives or counter host government controls on foreign imports by establishing a foreign production facility. Over time, the firm moves from the early foreign production stage into a phase of growth through production or service, standardization, and diversification. Consequently, the strain of sheer size may create problems. The international division becomes overstretched, making effective communication and efficiency of operation difficult. Another step is licensing. Licensing means that the organization grants foreign firms the right to use their intellectual property. Or franchising is the parent company grants another firm the right to do business in a described manner. The number of steps or stages along the path to multinational status varies from firm to firm, as does the time frame involved. However, the concept of an evolutionary process is useful in illustrating the organizational adjustments required of a firm moving along the path to international status. International business operations can take several different forms. A large percentage carry their international business with only limited facilities in foreign countries. Others have extensive facilities and personnel in various countries of the world. Dell, for example, actually employs more people outside the United States than within. Managing the resources effectively and integrating their activities to achieve global advantages is a challenge to the leadership of these companies. These figures shows you 4 basic types of organizations and how they differ in the degree to which international activities are separated to respond to the local regions and integrated to achieve global efficiency. The international corporation is essentially a domestic firm that builds on its existing capabilities to penetrate overseas market. Companies such as Honda, General Electric, and Procter & Gamble used this approach to gain access to Europe. They essentially adapted existing products for overseas markets without changing much else about their normal operations. A multi-domestic corporation is a more complex form that usually has fully autonomous units operating in multiple countries. Shell, Philips, and ITT are 3 typical MDCs. These companies have traditionally given their foreign subsidiaries a great deal of latitude to address local issues such as consumer preferences, political pressure, and economic trends in different regions of the world. Frequently, these subsidiaries are run as independent companies without much integration. The global corporation, on the other hand, can be viewed as a multinational firm that maintains control over its operations worldwide from the country in which it is headquartered. Japanese companies such as NEC tend to treat the world market as a unified whole and try to combine their activities in each country to maximize their efficiencies on a global scale. These companies operate much like a domestic firm, except that they view the whole world as their marketplace. Finally, a transnational corporation attempts to achieve the local responsiveness of a multi-domestic company while also achieving the efficiency of a global firm. To balance this global-local dilemma, a transnational corporation uses a network structure that coordinates special facilities positioned around the world. By using this flexible structure, a transnational corporation provides autonomy to its operations in foreign countries, but bring these separate activities together into an integrated whole. For most companies, the transnational form represents an ideal rather than a reality. However, companies like IBM, Ford have made good progress in restructuring their operations to function more transnationally. We heard now a lot about the different stages a company can take to get international. Now I would like to use this as a background, and we talked about the definition of international human resource management. And there the question comes up, which activities change when human resource management goes international? An excellent early model developed by Morgan is very helpful in terms of answering this question. Morgan presents international human resource management in 3 dimensions. The first one is the broad HR activities of procurement, allocation, and utilization. These 3 broad activities can be easily expanded into the 6 HR activities like HR planning, staffing, performance management, training and development, compensation and benefit, and industrial relationships. The second dimension is the national or country categories involved in human resource management. These are the host country, where the subsidiary may be located, the parent country, where the firm is headquartered, and other countries that may be the source of labor, finance, and other inputs. The third dimension comprises the 3 categories of employees an international firm has. These are host country nationals, parent country nationals, and third country nationals. One obvious difference between domestic and international human resource management is that staff are moving across national boundaries into various roles within an international firm's foreign operations. These employees have traditionally been called expatriates. Here on this page I have indicated a situation where a US company is operating in Australia. So who would be the experts? The parent country nationals working in Australia, the third country nationals working in Australia, or the host country nationals working in Australia. Stahl, Björkman and Morris have recognized this expansion in the scope of the field of international human resource management in the Handbook of Research in International Human Resource Management, where they defined the field of IHRM as follows. We define the field of international human resource management broadly to cover all issues related to managing the global workforce and its contribution to firms' outcomes. Hence, our definition of international human resource management covers a wide range of HR issues facing multinational enterprises in different parts of their organizations. Additionally, we include comparative analysis of HRM in different countries. The complexity of operating in different countries and employing different national categories of workers is a key variable that differentiates domestic and international human resource management. The differentiation can be attributed to 6 factors: more HR activities, the need for a broader perspective, more involvement in employees' personal lives, changes in emphasis as the workforce mix of expatriates and local varies, risk exposure and broad external influences. To operate in an international environment, an HR department must engage in a number of activities that would not be necessary in a domestic environment. Examples of required international activities are international taxation, international relocation and orientation, administrative services for expatriates, host government relations, and language translation services. International relocation includes a variety of activities. It started with the preparation training, providing immigration travel details, providing housing, shopping, medical care, recreation, school information, or it also includes compensation details. But a multinational enterprise also needs to provide administrative services for expats in the host country in which it operates. Providing these services can often be a time-consuming and complex activity because policies and procedures are not always clear-cut and may conflict with local conditions. Ethical questions can arise when a practice that is legal and accepted in the host country may be at best unethical and at worst illegal in the home country. For example, a situation may arise in which a host country requires an AIDS test for a work permit for an employee whose parent firm is headquartered in the US, where employment-related AIDS testing remains a controversial issue. HR managers working in a domestic environment generally administer programs for a single national group of employees who are covered by a uniform compensation policy and taxed by one national government. Because HR managers working in an international environment face the problem of designing and administering programs for more than one national group of employees. For example, parent country nationals, host country nationals and third country nationals, employees who may work together in Zurich at the European regional headquarters of a US-based multinational. A greater degree of involvement in employees' personal lives is necessary for the selection, training, and effective management of both parent country nationals and third country nationals employees. The HR department or HR professional needs to ensure that the expatriate employee understands housing arrangements, health care, and all aspects of the compensation package provided for the assignment. In international human resource management, the whole family of the expat is involved. Very often a marriage certificate is needed for a visa, or the houses and schooling has to be arranged for the children. So it's not only the person, it's also the whole family which have to be considered and taken into consideration. As foreign operations mature, the emphasis put on various HR activities change. For example, as the need for parent country nationals and third country nationals declines and more trained local become available, resources previously allocated to areas such as expatriation, taxation, relocation, and orientation are transferred to activities such as local staff selection, training, and management development. The latter activity may require the establishment of a program to bring high potential local staff to corporate headquarters for development assignments. The need to change emphasis in HR operations as a foreign subsidiary matures is clearly a factor that would broaden the responsibility of local HR activities such as HR planning, staffing, training and development, and compensation. Frequently, the human and financial consequences of failure in the international areas are more severe than in domestic. A risk which can arise through the failure of expats working in other country being not successfully or underperforming is critical to the company. And another aspect of risk exposure which is relevant to international human resource management is terrorism, particularly since the World Trade Center attack in New York. Most major multinational enterprises must now consider political risk and terrorism when planning international meetings and assignments, and spending on protection against terrorism is increasing. Terrorism has also clearly had an effect on the way in which employees assess potential international assignment locations. The major external factors that influences international human resource management are the type of government, the state of economy, and the generally accepted practices of doing business in each of the various host countries in which the multinational operates. A host government can, for example, dictate hiring procedures, as has been the case until recently in Malaysia. In Malaysian government during the 1970s introduced a requirement that foreign firms comply with an extensive set of affirmative action rules designed to provide additional employment opportunities for the indigenous Malay ethnic group constitute the majority of the population of Malaysia, but tend to be underrepresented in business and professional employment groups relative to Chinese Malaysian and Indian Malaysians. After we heard now a lot that international human resources is influenced by various outside and inside factors, I would like to take now the next step in analyzing what does it mean. The purpose is to expand on the role of international human resource management in sustaining global growth. In this context, sourcing decisions are most important. I would like to introduce you to various approaches taking to staffing international operations and the allocation of human resources to the various international organizations of the firms to ensure effective strategic outcomes. I would like to introduce Perlmutter's concept for multinational enterprises. Mr. Perlmutter was an expert on globalization and internationalization of competencies, and he specialized in the development of international enterprises. The model is still basic in international management and international HR management. And Mr. Perlmutter lived from 1925 up to 2011. Using a polycentric approach involves the multinational enterprise treating each subsidiary as a distinct national entity with some decision-making autonomy. Subsidiaries are usually managed by host country nationals who are seldom promoted to positions at headquarters, and parent country nationals are rarely transferred to foreign subsidiary operations. This approach reflects the geographic strategy and structure of the multinational enterprise. Like the geocentric approach, it utilizes a wide pool of managers, but in a limited way. Staff may move outside of the home country, but only within the particular geographic region. Regional managers may not be promoted to headquarters positions, but enjoy a degree of regional autonomy in decision making. With a geocentric approach, the multinational enterprises is taking a global approach to its operations, recognizing that each part, subsidiaries and headquarters, make a unique contribution with its unique competence. It is accompanied by a worldwide integrated business, and multinational and nationality is less important than ability. This last approach was developed in the recent years, and it's an approach where they try to act as local as necessary and as standardized as possible. And local is the combination between local and global. We heard before that the internal and the external situation influence very much the internationalization of a firm and also the staffing choice. Here on this page you have 4 different factors which influences this staff choice. This is the context specification, is the local context of the headquarters as well as the subsidiaries can be described by cultural and institutional variables. Cultural values may differ considerably between the headquarter and the host country context. Firm-specific variables. These variables are outlined in the framework on strategic human resource management in multinational enterprises. The most relevant variables are multinational structure and strategy, international experience, corporate governance, and organizational culture, which describe the multinational as a whole. Local unit specificities. As the staff approach may vary with the cultural and institutional environment, it may also be dependent on the specificity of the local unit. An important factor here is the establishment method of the subsidiary. For example, whether it is a greenfield investment, a merger, acquisition, or a shared partnership. Furthermore, the strategic role of a subsidiary, its strategic importance for the multinational enterprise as a whole, and the related questions of the need for control and the locus of decision-making can influence staffing decisions. International human resource management practice, the selection, training and development, compensation and career management, including expatriation and repatriation, play an important role in the development of effective policies required to sustain a preferred staffing approach. After we heard now a lot that international human resources is influenced by various outside and inside factors, I would like to take now the next step in analyzing what does it mean. The purpose is to expand on the role of international human resource management in sustaining global growth. In this context, sourcing decisions are most important. I would like to introduce you to various approaches taking to staffing international operations and the allocation of human resources to the various international organizations of the firms to ensure effective strategic outcomes. I would like to introduce Perlmutter's concept for multinational enterprises. Mr. Perlmutter was an expert on globalization and internationalization of competencies, and he specialized in the development of international enterprises. The model is still basic in international management and international HR management. And Mr. Perlmutter lived from 1925 up to 2011. This description of the different approaches of international human resource management is a combination between the types of organization we had at the beginning of the seminar, together with the different approaches a company can take concerning international human resource management. More or less, it's a combination between Perlmutter's approach and the types of organization. And it differentiates between the advantage of globalization and the advantage of localization. In the picture you can see also the different paths you can take for internationalization. This means that you start always, or most of the time, as a national organization, and then you move either into the multinational environment or to a global approach. And from a global approach or a multinational approach, you can move to the fourth step, which is the transnational approach. And you can combine with the transnational approach its geocentric HRM, as well as a polycentric HRM with the multinational approach. And for a global or a national, you either choose an ethnocentric or a country-specific human resource management. You can also clearly see here that the advantage, the integration is higher with ethnocentric and geocentric HRM, and the localization is higher with polycentric approach or geocentric approach. After we heard now a lot that international human resources is influenced by various outside and inside factors, I would like to take now the next step in analyzing what does it mean. The purpose is to expand on the role of international human resource management in sustaining global growth. In this context, sourcing decisions are most important. I would like to introduce you to various approaches taking to staffing international operations and the allocation of human resources to the various international organizations of the firms to ensure effective strategic outcomes. I would like to introduce Perlmutter's concept for multinational enterprises. Mr. Perlmutter was an expert on globalization and internationalization of competencies, and he specialized in the development of international enterprises. The model is still basic in international management and international HR management. And Mr. Perlmutter lived from 1925 up to 2011. We talked before about the dependency of the organization concerning the local context and the internal environment. So it is important if we have local workforce which adhere to corporate norms of behavior, or we have to see how effective expatriates are as agents of socialization, and whether cost considerations have led the multinational to localize management prematurely. Hence, the role of appropriate HR activities become crucial. The aim of global local standardization of human resource management practices is to reach consistency, transparency, and an alignment of a geographically framed workforce around common principles and objectives. The use of common management practice is intended to foster a feeling of equal treatment among managers involved in cross-border activities, and at the same time aims at a common understanding of what is expected from the employees. Furthermore, consistent systems facilitate the administration processes by increasing operational efficiencies. The aim of realizing local responsiveness is to respect local cultural values, traditions, legislation, or other institutional constraints such as government policies and/or educational systems regarding human resource management and work practices. The challenge of many multinationals is to create a system that operates effectively in multiple countries by exploiting local differences and interdependencies, and at the same time sustaining global consistency. Unilever, for example, uses the same recruitment criteria and appraisal system on a worldwide basis to ensure a particular type of managerial behavior in each subsidiary. However, features of the national education systems and skill levels must be considered. This discussion has showed that standardization and localization choice that confronts the multinational in an area of operation such as marketing applies to the management of the global workforce as well. This is due to the fact that human resource management carries out a strategic support function within the firm. To sum up, the exact balance of a firm's human resource management standardization and localization choice is based on factors of influence such as strategy, structure, firm size, and maturity. The strength of corporate culture plays an important role on standardization side, while the culture and institutional environment, including features of the local entity such as operation mode and subsidiary role, play an important role on the localization side. Here on this page you have factors which are driving localization, and these factors include the cultural and institutional environment and features of the local entity itself. I think this page is also a good summary for the discussion we had during this and the last session, taking into consideration the culture and to take into consideration where the organization comes from, the country of origin, as well as where it's operating or where it decides to operate. On this page and the next you see and research which was mentioned in the book of Tesla about the individual engagements of employees, about similarities and differences around the globe. And on the next page you can see factors which drives the employees' engagement. Again, differentiated according to the countries where they come from. We started this session to talk about companies who tend to evolve from running their international operations from home-based international units to a multinational structure where subsidiaries around largely control themselves to a fully unified global companies with a unified management structure worldwide. The question is now how to put into practice a global HR system. And I would like to refer on a study which I found also in the book of Tesla, which is a research from on 6 global companies like Shell Oil, etc., and with international HR consultants. The study's overall conclusion was that employers who successfully implement global HR system do so by applying several best practices. The basic idea is to develop systems that are acceptable to employees in units around the world, and ones that the employers can implement more effectively. And this you can see here in the graphic. To head off resistance, human resource managers around the world should feel part of the firm's global human resource management team. Treat the local human resource managers as equal partners. For instance, form global teams to develop the new human resources system. Create an infrastructures of partners around the world that you use for support, for buy-in, for organization of local activities, and to help you better understand their own systems and their own challenges. Remember that it's more important to standardize ends and competencies than specific methods. For example, IBM used a basically standardized recruitment and selection process worldwide. However, details such as who conducts the interview, the hiring manager versus the recruiter, or whether the pre-screen is by a phone or in person differs by country. Here on this page you find the 3 best practices which helps that a global human resource system will be acceptable by local managers around the world. The first bullet point, remember that truly global organizations find it easier to install global systems. Means that if an organization is really working globally, they automatically think about international activities. For example, if you hire people in the US, you automatically think, are they able and can they work in another country? The next best practice will be supported by carefully assess whether the local culture or other differences might in fact undermine the new system. Be knowledgeable about local legal issues and be willing to differentiate where necessary. The third best practice will be supported when organizations obtain agreement among far-flung employees. For example, because of how P&G recruits, select, trains and rewards them, its managers have a strong sense of shared values. For example, new recruits quickly learn how to think in terms of we instead of I. Two best practices helped ensure success in actually implementing the globally consistent human resource policies and practice. First one, you can't communicate enough. The second one, dedicate adequate resources. You can't communicate enough means there is a need for constant contact with the decision makers in each country, as well as the people who will be implementing and using the system. Dedicate adequate resources means, for example, don't require the local human resource management offices to implement new job analysis procedure unless the head office provides adequate resources for these additional activities.